Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is January 18th. What's today? Thursday. I thought I might as well tell you the day of the week as well. Thursday, January 18th, 2018. Lots of 18s involved in today's show. That's two so far, and I'm sure we'll find another one somewhere along the line. Roy Moore now out of the news. We finished with all the numbers under 18, and certainly we can find somebody over 18 to discuss in today's news. Bill in Portland, Maine, thank you very much, as always, for your morning tweet. Daily Co's Radio is live now. I'm telling you this right up front. Having been shut out of the Fake News Awards, Kagro X, me, spends 2 hours wondering what the point is of anything anymore. What is the point of anything anymore? I didn't think I was going to get one of those awards, but I didn't think those awards were going to come through either. President Trump coming through clutch at the last minute, realizing that people were laughing at him for, I guess, possibly having to postpone his Fake News Awards once again, typed up or caused to be typed up a, ramshackle last minute list of what? I think he put there, I saw a written list of 10 Fake News Awards plus number 11, because this one goes to 11. I made that up. That's my own line. And number 11 is all of you are fake and I hate your guts, basically. It was the lamest thing you ever saw. And he had to task it out to the RNC because it was too political, I guess. Somebody must have said, for the White House to actually handle. So the RNC, I did see somebody complaining today, like a news story quoting an RNC official, unnamed of course, saying the RNC is now the dumping ground for anything that's too crazy to attach the White House name to. And they love it. They must be really enjoying things so much over there. When they found out that they would be the ones putting out all the dumb stuff. Too dumb for the White House? This White House? Give it to us. We'll handle it. We're professionals. So there we are. We are back on the air today. Prams zapped, but to no avail. And I so far have found no entries anywhere in the brief Google search I've been able to do for the problem of dealing with Skype not detecting a microphone that is obviously has no problem working with. So we are once again without music for our phone-in guest. So I'll have to hum during the whole break. That's really quite a chore when you're, still battling this cold. Still holding it off on the perimeters here. The defenses are holding. Hopefully this thing doesn't really take root at any time. And how these things go, it'll just linger there for 3 weeks, bothering me. I almost rather just have the cold and get rid of it. But okay, we're soldiering on, as it were. And we have to say that because we honor our troops in this country. God damn it. Please. Anyway, let's see. Where are we? We got a raft of stories in the wings. Greg Dworkin already working to put that together. I see the morning has been rife with Donald Trump anger tweets. And as usual, they are error-filled. Daniel Dale, as usual, on the case. Donald the dotard J. Trump tweeting this morning, "We need the wall." He's all about the wall this morning. Word is leaking out that Mexico's never going to pay for the wall, and it's finally getting through in the White House. And so, of course, the president has to wake up early to tweet that, yes, they will. But the chief of staff says, nah, they really aren't going to. We need the wall, and he doesn't capitalize but this time he capitalizes wall. Early in the morning, it was the wall, capitals. We need the wall for the safety and security of our country. We need the wall to help stop the massive inflow of drugs from Mexico, now rated the #1 most dangerous country in the world, right here in our backyard. What are we doing? Ladies and gentlemen, America is falling down on the job. World security, the most dangerous country in the world, right next door to us, shares an enormous border with us. We do nothing about it. On your watch, Mr. Trump, I ask you, if there is no wall, there is no deal, capital D, deal. No one even knows what deal he's talking about. I mean, I think he might be, we really don't know. He might be talking about DACA. I won't, renew DACA unless there's a wall, which we'll pay for, not Mexico, something. He may mean, I won't let the government reopen if there isn't a wall fund in there. I'm not sure exactly to which he's referring. Could be either, and legitimately so. Anyway, Daniel Dale points out, more important than any of the rest of the things I have to say, is that Mexico has not been rated the number one most dangerous country in the world. Now, there was a May 2017 report that found that Mexico had the second most armed conflict fatalities in the world. Question mark for who had the most. Might be us. I don't know. But the authors withdrew the report in June, a month later, after admitting to a methodological flaw, which, if Donald Trump were in disagreement with them, would be fake news, but okay. Anyway, that's where we were. In case you were wondering, why haven't I heard that our large neighbor is the most dangerous country in the world? Even though I have heard that everybody in the desert Southwest has been decapitated. I mean, everybody. It's amazing. It explains a lot. But, the reason is it's not true. That shouldn't surprise you. Let's see. He's anger tweeting about everything else in the world. Who cares? We'll ignore most of it. I think there was an early consensus to try to ignore the fake news awards, period, though it's always tempting to try and make fun of the list. I don't even think, though, that I put the list away anywhere. Anyway, it was really dumb stuff, like his top 10 fake news awards. The news awards went to stuff like, you remember the time that the reporter said that he didn't see the Martin Luther King Jr. bust in the Oval Office, and so that it had been moved, but then later found out, it was there, or at least the White House claims it was always there. It was just obscured from view. Sorry about that. That's one of the top 10 fake news. That was a fake news award. So, I mean, if you decide to take it substantively, this fake news award, I can't imagine why you would do that or could do that. But if you tried, you would still find that it's basically stuff where people said, I don't see very many people in this rally. And then, later on, people did show up for the rally. Okay, oops, sorry, I got a photo from somebody on the ground, and Trump was on the stage, but it turns out it was for a sound check, and most of the people hadn't attended yet. Sorry, and that's a fake news award. So it was mostly reporters making errors, which they later corrected, and he's still wrapped up and is still bitter about this. Some of these things are months and months old. That's just the way he operates. That's the one thing he can remember is slights against him. That he's retained the faculty for. Anyway, Greg Dworkin on the air with us now. He's retained the faculty for that as well. And good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. So you know what else Trump did?
No.
Well, he tweeted about the continuing resolution to keep the government open and screwed everything up.
Oh, well, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, how did he do that?
Well, as you know, and as your listeners know, or as your listeners may know, the government closes down by Friday night unless they come up with a new CR.
Right, Shabbat.
And so what'll happen, it's midnight, not sundown, but the whole idea is it's necessary or the government closes. And it's been contentious, and there's a number of reasons why it's contentious. But the main reason is that Democrats are insisting that the Dreamers get taken care of. And by the way, they also want funding for CHIP. 16 states, according to Kaiser Foundation, will run out of money by the end of January for CHIP. That's the children's insurance. And 3/4 of the states by March. So that's a Trump constituency and a priority for Democrats. They should be able to agree on that. And DACA, the fix for the Dreamers who were brought here illegally as children, is popular with about 70% of the public, including Trump supporters. So it should be a no-brainer.
And he
except
has
for one
no
thing.
brain, so
he
that's
has
great.
no brain, right? So it's a perfect match. But the thing is that it's been a very contentious negotiation because the leaders of the Republican Party in Congress, which is the same McConnell and Ryan, have been reluctant to move on DACA. They're a little bit more willing to move on CHIP, but not DACA. CHIP is more the constituents, DACA not so much. And it's been extremely difficult. So finally, after negotiations, there was a House meeting, I guess, Appropriations Committee, and they put together a rule. Okay. You'll have to explain this. But one of the rules that they did last night is you can't negotiate on this. This is it.
Okay.
Right? Well, we're going to send this. You can't negotiate on CHIP. It's a 6-year extension, and don't talk to me about 10, and don't talk to me about anything else. It's done. This is what we're going to vote on, presumably today or tomorrow, and then send over to the Senate, and then they're supposed to do it, and then the government gets funded through mid-February.
Yeah.
So far, so good?
I like the mid-February thing. Sure.
So okay. Donald J. Trump at about 35 minutes ago tweets, CHIP should be part of a long-term solution, not a 30-day or short-term extension.
Okay.
That is not what Paul Ryan did.
Well, so CHIP shouldn't be part of any short-term extension. Now,
in other words, what they did last night is not what Trump supports, according to his tweet. According to his tweet from 35 minutes ago, we haven't seen the one from 5 minutes from now. So the way Garrett Haake over at NBC sums it up, there's the update. The GOP Senate Majority Leader doesn't know where the president stands on immigration, which is why McConnell says that he doesn't want to do anything on DACA because he has no idea where the president stands. And the president is openly opposing a key part of the CR being pushed by the GOP Speaker of the House, unity government. Matt Lewis observes, conservative Matt Lewis, why does Mitch McConnell insist on waiting for Trump to define exactly what he wants on immigration? Did you see how Trump just upended the CR negotiations with his tweet about CHIP?
Yeah. That's a good point, even though Matthew K. Lewis is a dotard. But okay.
Maybe, but, it is a good point. And so I was trying to work through this yesterday, and what I wrote is what should be clear to anybody by now. Number one, Trump has no grasp of policy details.
Right.
Jonathan Bernstein, the political sciences, corrected me and said, Trump has no grasp on policy. Forget about details.
True.
Number two, he is easily manipulated by his advisors. Yes. Number three, and this is the important one for this discussion, he cannot broker a deal because nobody on either side trusts him. And he this morning showed us why that is the case.
That is true.
And then I felt that what he weighs doesn't matter, but that's another story. We talked about that yesterday. We don't have to go back to that. The important thing is nobody trusts Trump on either side of the aisle because whatever he says, 10 minutes later, he's going to change his mind.
As he does about his weight.
About everything. Nobody believes him.
Told you, man.
He lies. And when he's not lying and he's sincere about it for 15 minutes, that doesn't help you because it's the 17th minute that sometimes you have to do stuff and he's already changed his mind. John Kelly, his chief of staff, was just announcing to the world that Trump didn't really know anything about politics or anything else, certainly not policy. So everything he said during the campaign was wrong about the wall and pretty much everything else. You don't have to pay attention.
Right. And then doesn't Trump answer him by saying, no, what I said during the campaign is paramount.
That's why he was tweeting what you read over the air about the wall.
That's how he got to it. Okay. I mean, it could just be random.
It could be, but in this case, I think he was answering John Kelly. The only other explanation for why he tweets what he does is somebody on Fox said something right before.
Did John Kelly say it on Fox, or did Fox air that? Is that
what
could
happened? Have aired it. He said it yesterday, but he could have aired it. Oh. But this whole thing about what's happening right now, here's another tweet I was writing this morning. Here's the situation. You got two popular programs, CHIP, which is the children's program, and DACA, the Dreamers, and it might lead to a government shutdown because Republicans are screwing up how to hold them hostage. I mean, the Democrats want these programs passed because it benefits recipients, and Democrats are about, governments and constituent service. The Republicans might want it passed, but only transactionally. That is to say, to get something they want. And that's fine. That's normally how government works. That's okay.
Yeah.
They'd be perfectly okay with CHIP. But Republican leaders want their own priorities. They want to fund the military. That's really their big thing. They really don't want to do DACA, but they may feel like they have to at some point because it's a popular program and they feel up against the wall. But the only reason that they would do CHIP or DACA at this particular point, because CHIP costs money and they hate spending money, is to get something that they want. What they want is they want the government to stay open so they don't get blamed, and what they want is to fund the military. Now, it's a reasonable swap, so you should just do it. But they won't because they really don't want to pass DACA. That's like a bedrock principle. They do not want to back off on their hardline Steve King, immigration, Tom Cotton point of view. And the nativists that are in the White House, Trump and John Kelly, and of course Stephen Miller, are totally okay with that. And that's why it's so difficult. So right now, you have this impasse. It's easy to fix the impasse. You just use Democratic votes by including DACA. Could be done in a heartbeat. And John Boehner used to, on occasion, use Democratic votes, not only to get things passed, but also to bring the Freedom Caucus in line and say you can't have absolutely everything you want and hold us hostage. Paul Ryan refuses to do that, thereby ceding a lot of the power of the speakership to them.
Well, which
is something we've discussed and I've never understood.
Yeah. That was the condition of his winning the speakership, although honestly...
Well, he's probably going to retire in November after they get clocked and it's his fault. What does he care?
That's true, for one thing, and for another, he's... These kind of politics, it works this way. You got it now, so do it. So use it and, they'll throw me out. All right, that's fine.
Gavel is powerful, but only if you use it.
Yeah, well, that's true. We learned that lesson. Well, no, we didn't. I mean, it was taught to us. We ignored it. But
Armando's threatening to come on and tell me I'm wrong. I'm happy to call back or have you call me back to get us on together.
He is. I think I will give him a call. He wants to discuss CR strategy. That's
which is
obvious
a very good point.
You're wrong here. So let's see if we can add him in here. How will I do this?
I'm sure I'll find a way.
Yeah. Well, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to add Armando here, I think, and we'll see if we can't make this work. Let's see. No,
you better make a new one.
Yeah. This is a good question. Let's see. If I have you on here, and is there no
For folks playing along at home, I never asked David to assemble any of my furniture I get from IKEA.
I'm very deliberate about these things, and I do a very good job. It's very funny. People come to me. People are constantly coming to me, asking me, Donald, will you please put together my IKEA furniture? I can't figure it out, and I'm so mentally, by the way, did you see that he was bragging on his mental acuity test score?
Something like that.
He was speaking to Reuters. Reuters doing another one of these fantastic, let's interview the president for no particular reason, and then run the transcript thing, which I like. And part of his discussion with them was bragging on his score. I got a perfect score on the mental test, by the way.
Not just that, but, obviously Clinton and Bush... left all the big and Obama left all the big problems from me because I scored so high.
Right. He thought he took an IQ test of some kind. What is this animal? It's a lion. Yeah, IQ. You're pretty good. All right. I think I found the button to add Armando. We'll give it a try, and it'll ring on his end, and we'll see whether this works.
Okay, me.
Oh. Hey,
hello.
Armando is there, and Greg is not? How can this be? This is the worst.
All right, you know what?
Hang on. Let me go back there.
All right, put me on hold and see if Greg comes back. I think he gets put on automatically on hold.
Yeah. Okay. This is in other words, there's no real reason to have Skype at this point. Let me try one more thing here. Greg, are you... all right, let's see if it rings on his end. Greg?
Hi.
Hi, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, Armando, are you there?
I am indeed.
Holy mackerel.
How do you know?
You know what? This is the strangest thing. I did the same process, but for some reason, the first time it puts you on hold, Greg, and then
it gives me an option for me to join the call.
Does it? Okay, well, then I just hit the same add button, and I say add the guy I had a minute ago, and who's still on the line, by the way. And I guess did it send you that signal? Did it just show up on your screen?
Yeah. No, I had to go look for it.
Oh.
But once I found that, I hit, I'm joining.
Yeah, this is a great app, Skype.
Skype has completely outsmarted itself. It had a pretty good app, and now it's turned it by improvements. It's made it terrible.
Well, okay.
So put flange A into slot B.
Right.
and then tighten it with some Gorilla Glue, and let's see if that works.
At the end, I have 11 Allen wrenches and no real...
Which is terrific.
I don't understand what to do with these things.
Allen wants his wrenches back, by the way.
You can have them, Al. These are the worst wrenches. All right.
Yeah, he's really ticked off. You borrowed them for like 2 years, and you never gave them back. So to put Armando in the right mood, today is the day that the New York Times, instead of an editorial section, is doing all of the letters about why I voted for Trump and still love him. And Kevin Kruse, the historian, had a great tweet this morning. He said, I know everybody's upset that much of the media is still focused on loyal Trump supporters, but rest assured, if the Democrats post big wins this fall, then the media will start to focus on loyal Trump supporters.
That's the good news.
And it's funny because it's true, right?
It's funny because it's true. So about this CR. So basically, nobody really has a clue as to what's going to happen at this particular point in time. Paul Ryan says he has the votes. Mark Meadows from the Freedom Caucus says he doesn't. If he does have the votes and it goes as is, no negotiation, because that's what the rule says from last night, then it goes over to the Senate, and the Senate doesn't have the votes. So we see what happens.
All right.
Yeah, I don't believe Mark Meadows. They always cave. And I'm not sure I believe the Republicans in the Senate. They cave too. So I think if Ryan put it on the floor, it'd pass, and I think the Senate, well, there will not be Republican opposition, but they need 60. So I don't think there are, even though Perry Bacon at 538 says that Democrats aren't likely to hold up here, I think he's very much underestimating the feeling on that. I think the key vote is the Senate.
We don't know what the Senate's going to do. We honestly don't. I don't know that the Senate's going to pass it.
Right. So the reason I wanted to come on is Greg and I were having an exchange on Twitter that I thought was interesting. And frankly, Trump blew it up after his tweet because my thinking was, 6 years CR, if I can go fight DACA again in February, I think I might do that if I'm a Democrat. I'll catch some hell in the short term, but if I fight for DACA in February, I'd make all that up. So to me, I pocket chip, and then I fight DACA in February. As long as there is not a CR that extends past March 5th, we'll have our opportunity to fight for DACA before it expires.
Right. Okay.
And there's another point in that on Armando's side in arguing this, and that is the court case that said that you have to continue to process DACA stuff as is, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct.
Giving you a little bit more time. Right,
it does. That's why you can wait till March 5th right now because of it. The problem, contra to my argument, is there is a motion to stay that decision before the Supreme Court that was filed by the Trump administration. And knowing this Supreme Court, it's at best 50-50.
Right, so that might be lost and you might be back to where you were. That's exactly what I'm worried about.
Mind you, the irreparable harm argument, which is necessary for a stay, really cuts against the government if we're going to have honest brokers in the Supreme Court. Because having to process DACA applications to March 5th is simply not an irreparable harm to the government at all. You're just processing it. And indeed, one of the reasons the court issued the order is that Trump said he wants DACA. They quoted his tweets, and he's quoted this and that. So there really says, how can you say there's irreparable harm when your client, the president, says he wants this?
Because 10 minutes later he says something else. And here's 72 different examples.
Now, listen, there was a whole big fight last year, people may not remember, about should the court take into account Trump's statements? First, it was about his campaign statements, and then it was about statements when he was president. Is that official policy of the government when the president says it? Well, it used to be. You just have a dumb president who just flies out of the mouth, which brings me back to CR and what I was discussing about taking Chip and fighting DACA next month. Well, Trump, I think, said today, as I interpreted his tweet, and I think that's the way the news agencies are interpreting it, is he doesn't want Chip funding to be a part of a short-term financing deal. He wants to keep the children as hostages until he gets his wall. He also tweeted that there will be no deal if there's no wall. That is, he will shut down the government if there is no wall.
Well, it's useful for him to take responsibility for it.
It's useful for us.
Yeah.
And this goes to strategy, both political and in terms of legislation. At this point, I believe the Republicans in Congress would do both a DACA and a chip deal. They don't want to. I think they really do fear a shutdown is going to be blamed on them. And this is where Bill Scher, who I know you talked about yesterday, David, and who I insulted a lot on Twitter yesterday, is wrong. This is not 1995, and this is not 2013. By the way, the so-called damage done in 2013 shutdown, which was Ted Cruz alone, basically, led to a sweeping Republican victory in 2014. So I'm not sure.
By the way, exactly. I need to notify you both, I guess, verbally that we are about 20 seconds from our first break. You can't hear the music once again, unfortunately. I'll hum it for you if you.
No, just let us know when we're actually at the break, because the bottom line is everything is in chaos this morning. Trump's a chaos agent. He's getting what he wants, and that doesn't work for anybody else but him.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We are putting this thing together by the seat of our pants. The music is going out over the stream, so it sounds fantastic and regular and normal to everybody else. To those of us here on the call, and I like it. I hear the music. I'm enjoying it. The rest of the guys don't, but we're back. We have Armando and Greg Dworkin with us, and we're not at the stage of disagreement just yet, but maybe we can.
We're working our way to it. I have to note for the record, by the way, Trump has not tweeted anything in the last 35 minutes, so he hasn't taken back his tweet about Chip and blowing up the process this morning.
And I'm not
so
going
executive
to.
Time is over?
I think somebody's arguing with him, and he hasn't come to the conclusion that somebody else has to write a tweet that walks it back yet. That'll be within the next hour.
Right, in between McGriddles.
I think not, and I'll tell you why. And this goes to a discussion we sort of had offline, and I'll reset the table if I may. I think that Democrats have to be thinking in strategy in terms of two things: the legislative goals here and the political goals. Right now, I think it's clear that the Republicans in Congress would probably do both the Graham Durbin deal on DACA and the 6-year chip funding. Now, there is one piece out there that people are complaining about. I don't know enough about it, Greg, you might, which is I think the Freedom Caucus is demanding either repeal or suspension of certain health care taxes. I don't know enough about that issue, so I can't speak to whether that's something to fight about. I can tell you politically, saying I oppose repealing the medical device tax. I don't know. I don't know if that's a winner.
It's all about how you pay for it. The Cadillac tax is unpopular with a lot of people, but it's part of how you pay for and make the whole system work. So it's a wonky thing that's not going to be politically popular to continue with, but it's necessary if you really want the system to work right.
Is it really necessary? See, I don't know enough about it. I'll defer to everybody else as to how important it is to the whole
I mean,
program.
it's not like the Affordable Care Act is perfect, but it was carefully balanced and calibrated, and most of the stuff that's in there is in there for a reason.
The other thing I guess I would, well, this is going to 60 votes, so there's no bird rule issues, because obviously repealing taxes and appropriating spending on chip is going to cost money, so it will be deficit increasing. but it's 60 votes anyway, so that's not going to be an issue. But the question for Democrats, politically and legislatively, as I said, I think Republicans in Congress are not the problem. You mentioned it offline about McConnell saying, I don't know what to do on immigration because I don't know what the president wants. Well, the president told you what he wants today. $20 billion for the wall. Now, you can't spend $20 billion in a year for the wall. Trump says, yeah, he's a master builder. He can. Well, he can't. And you can't build a 1,000-mile wall.
Sure he can. Just give it to his kids and they'll build it for you. Trust me.
Yeah, well, that's obviously not going to work. And as Dick Durbin pointed out, the actual ask from the Trump administration was $1.6 billion for border security, open-ended. Presumably, it'd be wall-related, and the Democrats agreed to it. They agreed to his ask, and he still said no because I don't know why he said no, but someone told him to say no, and I assume they told him to say no because they were against the fix on TPS and other things that Lindsey Graham had agreed to. But the thing is, I think it's time to put it all on Trump and to say now, Greg, you're saying wait till the government shuts down. I say it now for legislative negotiating purposes. That, look, we have a deal. We have probably 58 senators in the Senate who are ready to go on the immigration deal. There is a majority that can pass it in the House. There will be enough Republicans that will join all the Democrats and pass that too. So the question I have is, if we put it on Trump and Republicans in the Congress, how much are they going to push back when it's not blaming them? Are they going to go fight for Trump on this? They don't even know what he wants.
They have already said in so many words it's Trump. Paul Ryan said, I'm not putting anything on the table if I don't know Trump's going to sign it. And McConnell has said, I can't do anything because I have no idea what Trump's talking about. So they've both, in their own way, said it's on Trump. So I don't think that that's going to be a problem for their side. You know, for our side, of course, we don't have any problem saying it's Trump and letting the House and Senate skate a little bit in terms of the leaders. But, of course, it depends upon what the thing actually is. If we're talking about what the rule was yesterday, what Paul Ryan is trying to do, it doesn't include DACA. So it's not exactly part of Armando's discussion. I think that they should insist that DACA and CHIP both get included in it. And then, yes, I agree with you. But that's not
remember,
what it is
DACA does that rule. The House rule on no amendments actually doesn't impact DACA.
No, that's about CHIP. You can't make it 10 years instead of 6, for example. That's what they're talking about.
Right. But DACA can be standalone in a companion bill, and you can basically say you have to. I don't know if people trust handshakes anymore, but suppose you do, and the same day a DACA bill, or basically the Graham bill, gets passed in the House.
Yeah, you have to do it together because it could have been yesterday, it could have been tomorrow, but nobody trusts them to do it. But you have to vote on this. So it's a must-pass bill, and that's why it's got to be somehow correlated with it, even if it's not in the bill itself.
Right, and David would know better than me, but by the way, I don't think CHIP has to be in the CR either. I think it could be done through a separate appropriation. But
after the rule, David?
Well, if it's done in a separate appropriation, the rule won't apply to it. I imagine what the rule says is that they can't offer any amendments to
this bill.
up CHIP to a 10-year renewal versus 6.
Or there can be no amendments.
But can you take it out?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess you.
No, according to Dennis, they cannot.
You could. I haven't
there
seen
can
the
be
rule,
no changes to the CR.
Oh, okay, so it's a closed rule for the CR then.
That's correct.
So that complicates things.
Well, it does, but it can be uncomplicated by having a separate bill funding CHIP, and have that again. You know, it's a question of whether you accept handshakes or you say, "Well, my bill goes first, or your bill goes first." I mean, in the old days,
we could live with the 6-year CHIP. You know, you have to add the DACA thing separate.
Well, again, and those could be separate bills. I believe the CR is for funding the entire government. I believe, and it doesn't include funding for CHIP, or it does include funding for CHIP as well. but it doesn't include DACA. But DACA is not an appropriation; it's just a law.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't have to be in an appropriations bill; it just needs to be passed.
It's improperly
The Democrats
included
the Democrats, and this is Cher's point, is that it does. You're the one. He says we're the ones jamming DACA into the CR conversation. He's absolutely right. We are.
But that doesn't mean we get blamed for it. He's absolutely, positively, 100% wrong about that.
I agree with that because the DACA crisis didn't form because of anything Democrats demanded. DACA was in place until Trump took it out.
Right.
And
but
Trump said,
that's not why he's wrong. In other words, from the public's point of view, they don't know about that and they don't care about that. What they do care about is Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. It's that simple. And no amount of explaining about how we got here is going to make any difference. It's their government.
I think that's absolutely true. I think people always overestimate the informed nature of the American public. They don't know anything. They know, and basically, you say about Congress, but I think it's easier than that. It's Trump is the dominant figure in our politics right now, and if something goes wrong, people are going to blame him. In fact, what's funny, of course, is he doesn't get any credit for, and he shouldn't, but people give credit for, let's say, the economy, which the economy is running good. And generally, presidents get credit for when the economy is running good. Joe Scarborough today said, it's amazing that Trump's only at 39% or 38%. He should be at 25%. And that's crazy. With a 3% growing economy, with an unemployment at below 4%, with the stock market at 26,000, he should be at 50% at worst. But he's such a nincompoop that people will not give him credit for it, and they will blame him when they can. I actually think
for half the population, that's a fixed thing. You're right, and nobody can do anything about that. That's just a given. So you could focus all you want to, New York Times, on the Trump voters who aren't giving him up. They're a small segment of the population. Everybody else has come to the conclusion. And in fact, here's some backup for that: the Quinnipiac poll from yesterday. Okay, asking about Oprah and some silly questions. But one of the things they asked is, would you vote for Trump again? 62-34, without knowing the opponent, said no. So you have that 34 who would vote for him again no matter what. They don't care about any of the information. But you have nearly 2/3 of the country who say no way, no matter what information.
That's exactly right. And it's baked in. The funny thing is you could do the, well, how will you ever give President Trump a chance to give them a full page? And most people will say no. Most, and I literally mean most, the majority of the country will not give him any more chances. I certainly won't.
Here's an interesting tidbit from John Delavolpe, who works out of Boston in the Institute of Politics there and concentrates on millennials. And he was looking at the Quinnipiac poll, and he had this interesting observation. He says millennials, more than any other age group, prefer presidents with actual government experience. This, in fact, could be the legacy of the Trump administration.
And I think that's one of the, the whole little Oprah boom, that Trump actually hurts her. And if you looked at the same Quinnipiac poll,
they don't want somebody with
she didn't run that well. Yep. Biden ran the best. And, I'm no Biden fan, but I mean, if you love these polls and approval ratings and whatnot,
at this point,
Joe Biden's the most popular politician right now.
At this point, it's name recognition.
Of course it is, but he's the symbol of responsible governance.
Yep. And people know Oprah has name recognition.
Exactly.
She does. And so does Biden. So does Bernie.
Exactly. And Biden runs best, and not by a little bit, by a lot. 10 points better than
but the observation about millennials and the idea that Trump has really kind of ruined it for the Jesse Venturas of the world who come next, that's okay.
That's fine.
And it's sort of unfair because you take a guy, look, I disagreed with a lot what he did, but Mike Bloomberg was a competent guy. He did not misrun New York City. He did things that were bad, stop and frisk, etc. but on a day-to-day basis, the man knew what he was doing for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is an idiot, but this is not new. This is the whole funny thing about it. David and I have discussed this ad infinitum. He was a terrible businessman.
Yes.
Well, he was a crook and a con man, and the only way he got bailed out is by Russia. By the way, before I leave, I do have to bring in another completely different story, but a fun one.
Yeah, let me shut up for a while and let you talk.
This one is FBI investigating whether Russian money went to NRA to help Trump.
Yes. And once again,
so I'm going to leave you with that because that's something I think you should talk
new.
about a bit.
Okay,
yeah.
I appreciate that. I do want to talk about that story.
But I got to run.
I told it to you.
Armando wasn't totally wrong this morning, which is a really wonderful thing.
That is wrong.
It's such a mess in terms of the way Trump governs. We know he's a chaos agent, but he has brought complete chaos to the House, and it's remarkable.
Yes.
It's not like they were really good at governing anyway.
Oh, they were the worst
but
until he got here.
He's making it worse than they used to be, and that's kind of tough given who they were. But it's on display this morning, and so I hope everybody pays attention to how Trump manages to lead the CR resolution in the government in terms of whether we close or whether we don't. With that, I'll leave my good friends Armando and David. We've been arguing like this for like 15 years now, and it's always fun. So come on as often as you can, Armando. In the meantime, I'm going to scoot, and I'll see you on Monday, David.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
Take care. Have a good weekend.
I'm sorry to step on Greg's segment a little bit, but the CR discussion he and I were having on Twitter I thought was interesting, which is what should Democrats do? I mean, there's the simple thing is just say no to everything and shut the government down until they cave. And I think that's frankly more likely now because Trump has made these noises about chip. Well, not even noises. He said, no chip. And he's also said no deal without the wall, which I'm not even sure if he means I want 20. And he did mention $20 billion, I believe, in his thing. So was he want an appropriation of $20 billion right now for next year?
I don't know. Maybe he might, but you can't.
What happens to appropriations if you don't spend the money? Do they expire?
I don't know. No, so if you don't spend the money, I mean, if it
let's
just
say you're
stays in the
appropriating
bank.
$20 billion to build the wall in the next fiscal year.
Okay.
And you don't spend the $20 billion in the fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
What happens in the next fiscal year?
The next technically you would. I mean, the money still. Well, I'm thinking about my answer, and I'm saying the money still exists, and I'm like thinking about Arliss Bunny sitting there saying the money always existed, though, and it did, yeah. So I mean, it's not they're not stacks of dollars or gold coins sitting anywhere, but as an appropriation, I mean, it's like it's an unauthorized appropriation at the moment, even if you do it, and I mean that's a pretty serious problem. One that I don't expect this president, to understand, and most presidents, even when they do understand, they don't care because they know you can work around it. But technically, you can't show up and add appropriations to an appropriations bill without running into the objection that this is an unauthorized appropriation. The process is supposed to be an authorizing committee. In this case, I assume it would be whoever oversees DHS. Although who knows, it's probably joint with any number of committees, and they say okay, we're going to authorize money to be spent and request of the appropriations committee that they appropriate money to that account. And if you show up with an appropriations bill that has appropriations in it that are unauthorized, it's subject to a point of order. But I'm sure in this case the rule will waive all those points of order anyway, with or without any wall money, because they just don't want that trouble. But
let me simplify the question and see if this makes sense. Can a future Congress, if the monies aren't spent, reverse that authorization?
Yeah. Yes.
But then he could veto it, so that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have no idea what Trump has in mind there.
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, he's got broad powers to reprogram funds from other accounts anyway, so there's no way to really lock him out of a figure like $20 billion you could probably reprogram pretty easily from other things. But the pools of money that will have $20 billion that won't. Well, he's such an
an
outlier as a president,
and who knows what Trump
right.
means. So I guess it's kind of silly to even speculate about what it could mean, because we don't even know what he means.
Yeah,
I would just take an aside on Greg's argument that Trump is just a chaos agent. He is a chaos agent, but I don't think it's deliberate. I just think he's just a fool. He's an idiot. It doesn't happen by plan. I think that's one of the things. I mean, people talk about distractions. Look at these tweets Trump did this morning. They were ridiculously bad tweets and give Democrats some real ammunition here to put all the shutdown blame on Trump. I accept Greg's general proposition that that's not as important as you think, because people blame the party in power anyway, and that's true. But it does make it easier to go on TV and say, look, there's 58 there's 58 senators ready to move. There's enough support in the House to pass it. The only obstacle to avoiding a shutdown is the president. And this after he said he'd sign anything that Congress gave to him. That's a pretty good talking point, it seems to me.
Yes. Well, it's a very difficult thing to discuss, the whole to discuss in procedural terms, because there's just no telling what Trump means on things, and I think you're right. Well, you both have a point. I think he's a chaos agent in the sense that, well, I mean, maybe he's the perfect chaos agent. He's such a great chaos agent that you have no ability to plan your chaos strategy with him. I'm so chaotic, I can't even be planned with for chaos. Oh, wow. So if you ever played the stupid nerd game that everybody now nerds are going to get upset. Dungeons and Dragons, right? Chaotic and lawful designations of the characters. But I guess he's so chaotic that even the people who are like, I love your chaos plans, let's do more of them, can't work with him, because he says, that's great, I love doing chaos. And then he loses his place because he's so chaotic. It causes chaos somewhere else. I thought we were going to do some chaos on immigration today. Oh, right, yeah, right. Bring me a Diet Coke. I want some Diet Coke chaos.
I actually think your attitude's the best one. We overthink Trump. He's just a buffoon.
What's on TV is what he's doing. That's it.
Exactly. It's true.
So, I don't know. I mean, it is chaos. He also uses it as an excuse.
So if Fox and Friends had gone on this morning and had said the House CR that Ryan wants is beautiful, gives Trump everything he wants, Trump would have said, let's pass that.
Yes. And they may yet do that, and then he'll change his mind. If they air it during executive time.
Can you imagine the programming of the dumbest show on television, Fox and Friends, is deciding the policy of the United States of America?
Well, that's, I can imagine that. And it's a fantasy come true for a lot of dumb people, and that's why they like Donald Trump so much. He's the only president we've ever had who's got the guts to implement the Fox and Friends agenda, which is what I want. Somebody made a great point of that, about Trump doesn't inspire his base. We have this idea about presidents and their bases and leading. He's doing it for his base, and he leads his base, and he's feeding his base. He is his base. That's the thing. He's just watching television along with his base. They love him because they're like, high five, we watch the same shows. Awesome. I love it. You guys must watch Fox and Friends too. I do. It's terrific. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could make those things happen in real life? I think I can. I'm going to do it. And that's the relationship he has with the base, is he's his own audience, quite literally in many respects. And he does rallies, and he reads, essentially repeats, here's what I heard on TV. Mexicans are rapists. We got to kick them out. Sons of bitches won't stand for the national anthem. And it's not him giving them those ideas, and it's not them giving him those ideas and him reflecting his base and leading from behind. It's people. It's a television fan forum online. Did you see Buffy the Vampire Slayer last night? Yeah, it was awesome. She totally killed that vampire. Yeah, let's make that the policy of the United States of America. It's just a fanzine as a government. And
it really is.
So
that's actually the best description of what we're living. People should listen to what David just said. That was actually a very profound 2 minutes of radio, because it. No, I'm not being sycophantic here. You really captured it. We over intellectualize this, but you just said it. Well, the guys on Fox and Friends said it, and we love Fox and Friends, and now Trump's doing what's on Fox and Friends. Isn't it great that he's doing what's on Fox and Friends?
They do like that.
And if you ever see these stupid Trump supporter focus groups, that's what they say. Not Fox and Friends, but they say he tells it like it is.
Yes.
He's finally getting things done.
And he tells it like it is because I know that's the way it is. I saw it this morning on TV. That's how I know it's the way it is. And he said, it might not even strike them, but it might. Oh yeah, you know what he said? It was on TV. That might, for a minute, they might say maybe he's not so smart. I mean, maybe I'm as smart as he is. If I just repeat what's on TV. I don't know whether that will jeopardize things. I didn't make it up either. In case you liked what I said, but you want somebody with some sort of credentials or something, or who's verified on Twitter, say, you could look to Jared Yates Sexton, a writer and associate professor, by the way, of creative writing, who has been published in the New York Times, the New Republic, for whatever that's worth, and Politico. Which is also, actually, that's a terrible lineup.
I won't be bragging.
But anyway, he did have a good point, and I grabbed it, and it's one of the few things I've got waiting for us in pocket. Just a couple of days ago, January 4th, Trump never inspired his base. He channeled it, spoke their language, lived their reality, because he was as steeped in it as they were. That's why this is such a mess. There is no philosophy, just reaction. He watches the same shows, listens to the same talking heads, bought into the alternate reality right-wing media created. It changes daily, switches allegiances when necessary. That's Gimitarianism, by the way. Never addresses any concern besides the need to fear. Other Republicans failed because they only pretended to believe the lie. They knew media was concocting all of this fear and paranoia for manipulative purposes. They couldn't match his level of belief. In other words, he got fooled. He thinks this is real. Republican a-holes, the rest of them, are smart enough to know it's fake. And people can see... You know, when they say, well, Trump, he's really genuine. And by the way, the New York Times says, Trump, he's really genuine. So it's not just, backwards idiots. It's also New York idiots that say these things. But, he's really genuine. What it means is he's as dumb as anybody who watches the show. He's not smart enough to... We know he's not manipulating us. We hate those Harvard guys who know that this is all bullshit stuff. I think I can say right. It's a bullshit.
Yeah, I mean,
he's say that.
He's Ted Yoho. He's Louis Gohmert, except he had that apprentice show.
Yeah,
and a Twitter account. And
so now he's president.
I don't think there's that. Are they less qualified than he is? Are they less knowledgeable than he is? All. Are they less ignorant than he is? It's like saying Louis Gohmert's the president.
Yes, but they've got one thing you haven't got, and that's money. And so here is a bank statement. I feel like the Wizard of Oz is going to bestow the brain of Donald Trump on these guys. Here's a bank statement. Now you're the president. Jared, by the way, he does continue on. There are a couple more tweets I think also help, clarify some of this. Trump is president. He's president because he lacked the necessary critical thinking to understand the grift. That is what Republican leaders do with Fox and Friends. The wink, wink, pretend I believe it, say it to the right audience, and throw a little Harvard polish on it. He operates within the fishbowl right-wing media created, which puts him directly in touch with his base. That's the genuineness. He's directly in touch with his base. Yeah, he literally tweets back and forth with them. And then when they tweet him dumb things that they lifted from a Russian Facebook page, he says, yeah, high five, and retweets it. So they put him directly in touch with his base, which others who are others who share that same stuff. It became a never-ending feedback loop, he continues, when Republicans used the media narrative for their own political purposes. They fed into it, and the media narrative fed into them. It just keeps getting worse. This will never get better until we realize Trump isn't the cause. He's the disease personified. He's his own audience. And that's why he demands when his staff goes on air that they speak to him directly. I want you to prove to me that you're on my side and play my game. And they do it. And it's right for the base because he's the base.
And that includes Dr. Ronnie Jackson, amazingly.
I guess so. I never go to any doctors who use diminutive nicknames professionally, to be honest. It's just not in my wheelhouse. All right, well, we are coming up on our next break.
And I have to run. So
well,
thanks for letting me join Greg and to talk about this stuff with you.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care, and we will be back in just a minute. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. We are only taking that 1 minute break at the top of the hour, which is it's a good thing. I don't want to lose my momentum. Chris Fry, thank you very much. Semper Curiosa on Twitter. He agrees with Armando that the analysis was spot on. I have to credit Jared for giving a more organized kernel to what does that even make sense? But a more organized, a more tightly bound nucleus, let's say, to the theory. But I mean, essentially, I have restated this, but it's also something I've believed, and I think a lot of the listeners to the show have believed for quite a while about this, that Trump isn't mentally capable of formulating or sticking to a plan for anything long enough to be worthy of calling a plan. I mean, there are pursuits in which he will be dogged. There are grudges that he can hold for a very long time, and he's ossified in his thinking. For instance, he'll never let go of all Haitians have AIDS. Africa is full of asshole countries. That's not changing. He's stuck in his ways. He's stuck in the 80s, and that won't change. Or he'll doggedly pursue, I know I want to have sex with Stormy Daniels, so I'm definitely going to pursue that, and I'm going to chase her around the room in my tighty whities if necessary, and of course it would be necessary. Those sorts of things. That doesn't count as long-term planning. He doesn't have anything. To the extent that he thinks he's a chaos agent, it's because he has heard it said somewhere, and it sounds awesome and sounds like a plan. And people sort of construct it after the fact. It's like backfill. What did he do? How can I explain it? Oh, well, he's a chaos agent. And that doesn't make the analysis wrong. It's just that, like I said, he's maybe agent is the wrong word. Like an agent has a plan and a long-term strategy and a goal, typically. We're just talking about agent like chemical reaction agent, not secret agent. Believe me, he's not got that temperament whatsoever. But it's, add him to a mix, he's going to add chaos to it. But that's because he doesn't know what he's going to say 1 minute to the next. We have a lot in common in that sense. But I still have my mental faculties. I don't know that it's going to last forever. He once had mental faculties. He didn't apply them very well. But, he was once articulate and had some strategic vision. But that was when he was in the real estate business as a developer. And then he found very quickly, through whatever, for whatever reason, he found himself very quickly in a very changed business posture, easily enough argued that he found himself in that posture because he had been a failure at the first posture. And that may very well be true, but that doesn't mean he didn't have strategic vision for his first business posture. It didn't work out. Might have been through his own fault, might have been overreach in other areas. I think he just thought he was destined to become the world's richest man, and he rolled the dice, literally, because he was in the casino business, on too many overbroad ventures, and ended up seeing the whole thing collapse on itself, and it ate up all the rest of his money. Had he stayed in real estate development, he might have been a continued and resounding success, given that he had, been bequeathed a $200 million birthright with which to start. But if he were just developing buildings on his own, buildings that I build and I put the Trump brand on it, and I personally, along with my kids, oversee what go into the building, he could have been quite successful, but he wouldn't be the richest, most admired, and by the way, sexiest man in the world. And so that wasn't enough for him. He believed that he deserved that, and that's nice for him. Everyone should believe that they deserve that. But with a touch of reality once in a while, maybe I won't get it. Or maybe I'm lying to myself and I don't deserve it, but it's a nice thing to tell myself. But he really actually believed it. And then his faculties began falling away. Again, perhaps through no fault of his own, although the cheeseburger diet surely does nothing to stave it off. But yeah, he aged, he diminished, he atrophied in the job because he was no longer developing his own buildings. He was simply letting other people do it and having money roll in. He had the apprentice thing going, and they were like, I can do no wrong. We literally have set up a team to film me walking around pretending I'm running a business and making it look like I'm a super genius, no matter what I say. I don't know how many people can't be a quote-unquote success at that. I mean, it's an anti-motivational theme, to be sure, but it's something we've discussed here and is a major theme in my life day to day. I say things frequently like, when you run into, super motivated, successful people, and here are my 7 secrets for success. First of all, you got to get out of bed like raring to go. I hit the ground running every morning. I can't wait to get to work. And I keep noting for the record that people who say things like, I can't wait to get to work, are their own bosses, almost universally. I don't know anybody other than, I guess, SpongeBob SquarePants, who I don't know personally, who's raring to go to work for somebody else. I can't wait to, generate profits that I won't share in. Yay! That doesn't happen. People who love to, get up early and whatever, read the paper, and I work out at 5 a.m. and I can't wait to get to work and I'm just so full of energy, are people who are in the business, whatever line of work, whatever, industry sector they're in. They're in the business of overseeing other people's responsibility for implementing their vision. I would love to get to work every day if if I had a team of people whose job was to implement my visions. It would be fantastic. I could never stop working. I do this show for 8 hours a day. If everybody else would just do Scott do the summary, and I have $1 million to pay you to do it, I'd feel a lot better about that. Somebody else produce the thing. Somebody else get me some guests. I want you to promote the show. You try to market it to radio stations. You, my agent, get to work on getting me paid for all that stuff. It would be fantastic. But as it is, life is a struggle for the rest of us, usually. And getting up and raring to go is not on the agenda. We're raring to get out of work and that's just because we have the opportunity to try our best and struggle against all odds to implement our visions ourselves. And that's actually quite troubling and difficult to do. And sometimes we don't even want to get up and go to work for ourselves. So we'll sit and watch TV instead of go out and join that yoga class or whatever. Anyway, it's an overarching, world-encompassing philosophy. For him, of course, he's never done anything that has, taken away his ability to jury rig a rich person's lifestyle for himself and his family. So he doesn't know what failure is, even though he lives steeped in it 24/7. He's just this thing, the chair I'm sitting in right now, the toilet I'm on right now is gold. The chair I'm sitting in is spray painted gold. Everywhere I go, Trump is plastered on everything. I have to be doing something right. So he was never going to accept that he was a failure in business. That was never going to sink in with him. And the more that he did that just brought him income, he never stopped, by the way, to think, why do I have a tremendous income from The Apprentice? Why do I have a tremendous income from licensing my name to other people who build cut rate BS hotels and put my name on it? Doesn't matter. I don't care. It doesn't enter into my thinking. And the less thinking I have to do about how to build a building and make it look good, the less my mental faculties are required. They atrophy, and he becomes the dotard we know today. That's my theory on how we got here and where we are today. And then it's gotten so bad that we're now at the point where he says that's a lion, that's a rhino, that's a camel, I'm a super genius, and he believes it. Although I now see that the Reuters interview that cites it now, I think they may have changed their language on it, but I'm not positive. I might have glossed over it the first time I read it. Say he joked that. So part of this discussion might have been a joke. I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about before returning to something slightly more important. But I do believe I put the Reuters piece aside, and I started with the Hill piece, because the Hill is the one that picked up on this piece of the Reuters interview. Reuters didn't know what kind of gold they had on that. Trump touts high score on cognitive test. Josh Delk notes for the Hill. President Trump on Wednesday touted his score on a cognitive test, suggesting he scored higher than his predecessors. Which I guess is technically true, because his predecessors almost certainly never took that test, because it was essentially a minimum basic skills for mental competency exam. I don't know that everybody would characterize it that way, and I'm sure some medical practitioners would argue with me, but you saw the test. The LA Times showed it to everybody. Draw a line from 1 to A and from 2 to B. Copy a picture of this cube. Draw me a clock that depicts 10 past 11. And tell me what are the names of these 3 animals. There were other tests in there, by the way. If you go through the rest of the exam, it's like, here's 5 words. I'm going to read you a list of 5 words. Repeat them back to me. You do it correctly, 5 points. I'm going to ask you a minute later, what were those 5 words? If you can do that, 2 points. Tell me what are the names of these animals. The one of them is, I'm going to read you a list of letters. Every time I say the letter A, I want you to tap your hand on the table or something like that. Here's a sequence of numbers. Repeat it back to me. Here's a sequence of 3 numbers. I want you to repeat it back to me backwards. That's literally the whole test. And he's like bragging about how he scored on that test. It's essentially, I got a perfect score on my, field sobriety test when I got pulled over. That's the highest possible score. It's like getting a 1600 on the SATs, only it's the drunk test. So, but there he is. In an interview with Reuters, he blamed former presidents Obama, George W. Bush, and Clinton for failing to solve the nuclear threat from North Korea. And this is where he then says, I guess they all realized they were going to have to leave it to a president that scored highest on tests, Trump said during the interview. Yeah, that is rather amazing, to say the least. And the Reuters interview exchange on this. Now, the Reuters headline is exclusive. Trump accuses Russia of helping North Korea evade sanctions. Says U.S. needs more missile defense, which is actually quite an interesting and worthy headline. And surely the more important news from the interview, to be honest. I mean, it's not like Reuters is hiding anything here. And it's not just a raw transcript, although I love when they print those. But they do note some interesting things like, during a 53-minute interview with a fresh Diet Coke near at hand at his desk, Trump also said he was considering a big fine as part of an investigation into China's alleged theft of intellectual property. So big fine, totally going to fine them. He declined to clear anything up about the S-hole countries remark, but basically they were talking about, North Korea and a couple of other things, and it prompts Trump to say that other presidents have been unable to solve the North Korea crisis, and I will, point out that there really hasn't been a North Korea crisis during all of those three preceding presidencies. But whatever. And then he says, I guess they all realize they're going to have to leave it to a president who scored the highest on tests. And Reuters says he joked. Now, again, even if you take it at face value, is he joking that they all declined? I think it's probably a joke. I would have to agree that he really thinks that the previous three presidents declined to deal with North Korea problems of any kind because they said, we need a smarter guy. We should wait for somebody who scores high on tests. But I don't think he's kidding or joking when he says that, that when he brags that he did well on this exam. This is not an exam you brag about. I mean, like, I'm going to test your reflexes now. Hit you with the little hammer. Boing. Oh, your knee popped out. Awesome. I aced the test. That's like a 100. On that knee. Or again, like the SATs. I got an 800 left knee, 800 right knee, 1600, perfect score. I can go to Harvard. Well, it's not really that kind of a test, but this is how this guy lives his life. No one tells him different, and when they do, they're fired. So that's how we get this guy. I told you that there was other news that was more important, and Greg brought it up. And it is the rediscovery, I think, the rediscovery of old news based on the the new semi-news, I guess. What is that? How I would to characterize it? That the FBI is investigating whether Russian money went to the NRA to help Trump. The news that Russian money may have gone to the NRA to help Trump is old news. The news that the FBI is investigating, is that true? I guess is the new news. McClatchy, who always impresses me, I think, fair enough to say, I'm sure they'll disappoint me someday, has this story. Peter Stone and Greg Gordon writing this piece. FBI investigating whether Russian money went to NRA to help Trump is datelined today. Brand new news from before I woke up, 5 a.m. The FBI is investigating whether a top Russian banker with ties to the Kremlin illegally funneled money to the NRA to help Donald Trump win the presidency. Two sources familiar with the matter have told McClatchy. FBI counterintelligence investigators have focused on the activities of Alexander Torshin. The name has been mentioned. The deputy governor of Russia's central bank, who is known for his close relationships with both Putin and the NRA. The sources said, it is illegal to use foreign money to influence federal elections. That's why we're having the investigation, in case you've lost that thread. But I appreciate that they say that. Because there are people who will, this will dawn on for the first time reading this article. Not here. We're all smart. It's unclear how long the Torshin inquiry has been ongoing, but the news comes as Justice Department Special Counsel Robert Mueller's sweeping investigation of Russian meddling in the 2016 election, including whether the Kremlin colluded with Trump's campaign. There's no collusion, no collusion. Ah, yes, that was number 11 on the list of the fake news awards. He did all the mistakes that people made. And then the biggest one, of course, is collusion. There's no collusion, no collusion, no collusion, which all innocent people like to say. Anyway, so things have been heating up. All the sources spoke on condition of anonymity because Mueller's investigation is confidential and mostly involves classified information. Mueller's office declined comment. Disclosure of the torsion investigation signals a new dimension in the 18-month-old FBI probe of Russia's interference. McClatchy reported a year ago that a multi-agency U.S. law enforcement and counterintelligence investigation into Russia's intervention begun even before the start of the 2016 general election campaign, initially included a focus on whether the Kremlin secretly helped fund efforts to boost Trump, but little has been said about that possibility in recent months. The extent to which the FBI has evidence of money flowing from torsion to the NRA, or of the NRA's participation in the transfer of funds, could not be learned. We should remember, by the way, I don't have to remind you. They'll do it in the very next paragraph. Look at this. However, the NRA reported spending a record, that's what I was going to say, $55 million on the 2016 elections, including $30 million to support Trump, triple what the group devoted to backing Republican Mitt Romney in the 2012 presidential race. Most of that money was spent by an arm of the NRA that is not required to disclose its donors, which is, again, problematic, and you really shouldn't have anything like that in the political arena, but Citizens United, et cetera, thanks a lot. Oh, by the way, I hired the head of Citizens United onto my campaign. What a coincidence. But it really should be noted that, that's important to it, right? We can't at this point prove, or you and I, maybe the FBI has the information and they aren't releasing it for their own purposes right now. But we're stuck saying, look, I can't prove that millions of dollars came from torsion and went to the NRA. And I can't prove that millions of dollars spent by the NRA to support Trump were spent because they had this enormous windfall from torsion. But I can tell you this. Torsion has an extraordinarily strange and close relationship with the NRA. For a guy who's Russian, the N, by the way, is for national, and they mean the United States of America. And Torsion is, of course, a Russian national. He's not going to have very much to do with the American National Rifle Association. But, it's not illegal for him to do it. He's an international kind of guy. He's an international man of mystery. He wants to associate himself very closely, for some unknown reason, with an organization in the United States, traditionally not a close and trusted ally, let's say, of Russia or the previous Soviet Union. But National Rifle Association, remember the history and heritage, because don't forget my heritage now. Now that you've torn down all my monuments, I don't want anybody forgetting my history and my heritage. It's heritage, not hate. Think about the history, traditional history, of the NRA. And I retweeted, just to put an exclamation point on the, we've known this part of the situation. My tweets of December 3rd, some of you may have seen go out during the show, in which we last discussed this issue of the strange relationship between Russia and the NRA and the Trump inner circle. But the surprise that struck me then, hey, I always thought the NRA was all about keeping Americans' right to bear arms in case the Russians invaded. We would be able to stop them, not help them facilitate the takeover of the American government, right? That's a weird thing. The NRA and Russia together, perfect together. Like Tom Kane used to say, if you're old enough to remember that. It's Tom Kane Sr., everybody. And it's kind of a surprising thing that Russians would take up with the NRA and send them lots of money. But the circumstantial evidence, what I'm saying here, is we can't prove torsion gave them all the money yet. We can't prove that all the money went to help Trump wasn't their own and wasn't their idea. But it does help to note that now I think we can establish, I guess they probably do have some evidence establishing the flow of money from torsion to the NRA. but the rest of it is missing. But the NRA suddenly, for some reason, decided to spend a record-breaking amount, triple the amount that it spent on the previous presidential election, $55 million, including $30 million to support Trump, who, by the way, really didn't say all that much about guns. I mean, he said the right things, and well, I love guns, and we got to protect the Second Amendment. And he repeated all the Fox and Friends lines, to be sure, and that made everybody enjoy the show. But there have been a lot more openly pro-gun candidates out there. But they thought, for some reason, millions, tens of millions of dollars more than we spent on anybody else needs to go to you. Now, that would be explainable by a number of things, including some fantastically wealthy or benefactor or someone who has embezzled a fantastic amount of money from, or it wouldn't be embezzlement if your president of your country said, take this money and do this with it. Perhaps maybe that's legal. And if it got earmarked for Trump, then that would help explain it. Back to the article, the real research here. 2 people with close connections to the powerful gun lobby, NRA, said its total election spending actually approached or exceeded $70 million. The reporting gap could be explained by the fact that independent groups are not required to reveal how much they spend on internet ads or field operations, including get-out-the-vote efforts. During the campaign, Trump was an outspoken advocate of the Second Amendment right to bear arms, at one point drawing a hail of criticism by suggesting that if Clinton were elected, gun rights advocates could stop her from winning confirmation of liberal Supreme Court justices who support gun control laws. If she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks, Trump said at a rally in August of 2016. Although the Second Amendment, people, maybe there is, I don't know. He was more outspoken than any other candidate in that he was hinting that, of course, NRA members could and should shoot Hillary Clinton. But he wasn't he certainly was no more adept on gun law and gun policy than anybody else. But how adept do you have to be to understand where the NRA is coming from? President Trump addressed the NRA convention. He did all sorts of fun things like that. He's the first president to do so in more than 30 years. All right, so maybe they did have more reason to support him. But at triple the levels, that I'm not so sure about. Anyway, let's see. Look at this. Oh, Spanish authorities tag torsion for money laundering. You remember a while back we actually threw the Spanish connection out there because they were really moving on, making some interesting allegations about the way Russians were interfering internationally with a lot of things. Not the American elections per se, but a lot of things in Spain. Torsion, a leading figure in Putin's party, has been implicated in money laundering by judicial authorities in Spain, as Bloomberg News first revealed in 2016. Spanish investigators alleged in an almost 500-page internal report that Torsion, who was then a senator, capitalized on his government role to assist mobsters laundering funds through Spanish properties and banks, Bloomberg reported. A summary obtained by McClatchy of the still-secret report links Torsion to Russian money laundering and describes him as a godfather in a major Russian criminal organization called Taganskaya. Best efforts at pronunciations there. Investigators for 3 congressional committees probing Russia's 2016 operations have also shown interest in Torsion, a lifetime NRA member who has attended several of its annual conventions. I mean, imagine it back in the day. A Russian senator. Well, first of all, they didn't have senators, but a member of the Politburo as a lifetime member of the NRA. Really? Okay, that raises no eyebrows. At the group's meeting in Kentucky in May of 2016, Torsion spoke to Donald Trump Jr. during a gala event at the group's national gathering when his father won an earlier than usual NRA presidential endorsement. An FBI spokesman declined to comment on the investigation. The NRA didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Torsion could not be reached for comment. And emails to the Russian central bank seeking comments from Torsion and the bank elicited no response. Not surprising, I guess. We'll wind up on this and move on right after our last break.
Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'm skimming through this. I'm trying to skim through this McClatchy article. It's rather more lengthy even than I thought, but perhaps it pays just to read through it, or at least part of the way through it. And again, I got to say, I think we prepared you pretty well here on the show. If you're a longtime listener, you know we have discussed the weird connections between the NRA and Russia and the Russians' own version of the NRA. And there was another weird Russian woman involved, remember, in all of this, who was a student slash lawyer slash lobbyist slash ran a furniture store in Siberia or whatever. Very weird story. A lot of weird Russian ladies turning up in all this stuff, and maybe I'm giving an unfair shake to the Russian ladies and all this, but it's very odd the way Natalia Veselnitskaya operates, the way this other one operates, who I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but perhaps we'll be able to pull it before this is all over, or maybe she even shows up in here. I see we're only a couple paragraphs away from running into George Papadopoulos again. George Papadopoulos, side note, his fiance is in the news quite frequently, trying to say that, he's really on the right side of history. He's a patriot. He's cooperating, etc. And there's news about her, too. I mean, she's in the news not just because of her recent interviews, but I guess people are saying, I guess the way they met was through that weird professor who tipped Papadopoulos off to the Russian dirt on Hillary and then sort of disappeared and was considered a bit of a weirdo right from the beginning. And I think he introduced him. She worked for him, which, okay, that's kind of the way people meet people, I guess. But it's also, of course, the way you introduce spies to their marks, etc. Just saying. What's strange about it is she keeps being described in the media, and I guess they just figure they'll take their word for it. And there are circumstances under which this could happen, which I suppose might be regarded as innocent. But she keeps introducing herself as an Italian national. Not to say that she was born in Italy necessarily. This is how it could come to pass. But and she works under a name that could plausibly be Italian, and she's being interviewed though. And she's the most Russian-sounding woman. I mean, not the most, but she's clearly got an Eastern European accent, if not Russian per se, then in the Russian orbit. And she looks, it can be deceiving, of course, but she's, I guess, rather Slavic in her looks rather than, I would say, classically Italian. But again, you can't tell all the time with certainty, but combined with the accent and the fact that she just miraculously ended up, hooking up with George Papadopoulos at the time that he was drunkenly blabbing to people in London that he was in like Flint with Donald Trump, leads to some suspicion. But that's not what we're here to discuss at the moment. We're here to discuss the latest news on the stuff we already read about with the relationship between the Russians and the NRA and their strange invitations to David Clark, for instance, the bling sheriff from Milwaukee, who found himself invited to Russia on behalf of the NRA or through the NRA under the auspices of the NRA, which is another weird pairing. Lots of good stuff to be mined out of here. Anyway, everybody couldn't be reached for comment. That's where we last left off. Remember that? Mueller's investigation has been edging closer to Trump's inner circle. This week, the New York Times reported that Mueller had negotiated an agreement under which Steve Bannon, who was recently ousted from his post as senior White House advisor and from Breitbart, would fully respond to questions about the Trump campaign. Bannon headed the campaign over its final weeks. News there, too, to try and unravel perhaps tomorrow or in some point next week about his stance with respect to how he answered questions in committee investigations and being subpoenaed in the middle of it. Very strange. We'll try and unravel that next week, I think. Since taking over the investigation last May, Mueller has secured guilty pleas from 2 former Trump aides. That's how Papadopoulos came up. He's the second one listed. Mike Flynn is the first, both of whom agreed to cooperate with prosecutors and criminal charges against 2 other top campaign figures, Manafort and Gates, listed here as well. A year ago, the three U.S. intelligence agencies signed off on a joint assessment that was the basis for the expulsion of 35 Russian diplomats and other sanctions against the Kremlin. You remember that. The intelligence agencies concluded that what began as a sophisticated Russian operation to undermine Americans' faith in democracy morphed into a drive to help Trump win. Torsion is among the phalanx of Putin proxies to draw close attention of U.S. investigators, who have also tracked the activities of several Russian billionaires and pro-Russian Ukrainian oligarchs that have come in contact with Trump or his surrogates. Torsion was a senior member of the Russian Senate and in recent years helped set up a Moscow gun rights group called Right to Bear Arms. That's where this woman was connected in all this. He not only spoke with Trump Jr. at the NRA convention, but he also tried unsuccessfully to broker a meeting between Putin and Trump in 2016, according to the Times. He further sought to meet privately with the candidate himself near the 2016 NRA convention. Torsion's ties with the NRA have flourished in recent years. In late 2015, he hosted 2 dinners for a high-level NRA delegation during its week-long visit to Moscow that included meetings with influential Russian government and business figures. This is what we're talking about. In their internal report, Spanish prosecutors revealed a web of covert financial and money laundering dealings between Torsion and Alexander Romanov. How did the Russians say it? Romanov or Romanov? We say, I guess, Romanov. But Romanov. And you know, the Russians, love-hate thing with Romanovs, but okay. A Russian, yes, who pleaded guilty to money laundering charges. Not money laundering. What a coincidence. In 2016, and was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison. The prosecutor's evidence included 33 audio recordings of phone conversations from mid-2012 to mid-2013 between the two, Torsion and Romanov, who allegedly laundered funds to buy you'll never guess what, a hotel on the ritzy island of Mallorca. Torsion had an 80% stake in the venture, the Spanish report said. In phone conversations, Romanov referred to Torsion as the godfather or boss. That's something you want to avoid. Torsion has denied any links to organized crime. That won't help. And said his dealings with Romanov were purely social. It's a social club. The Madrid-based newspaper El País last year reported that Spanish police were on the verge of arresting Torsion in the summer of 2013 when he had planned to attend a birthday party for Romanov, but a Russian prosecutor tipped the bank to plans to nab him if he set foot in Spain, and Torsion canceled his trip. By the way, Donald Trump just recently canceled his trip to London. Nothing to do with that, I'm sure. The House and Senate Intelligence Committees and Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee also have taken an interest in Torsion as part of their parallel inquiries. In questioning Donald Trump Jr. in mid-December, investigators for the Senate Intelligence Committee asked about his encounter with Torsion at the NRA convention. Alan Futerfas, remember that guy, the ridiculously named lawyer for Trump Jr., said his client and Torsion talked only briefly when they were introduced during a meal. It's always during meals with these Trumps. It was all gun-related small talk, Futerfas told McClatchy. Oh, and Russian adoption, I'm sure. Dianne Feinstein, the ranking Democrat, local? not to me, but to you guys maybe listening on the West Coast. Ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee sent letters in November to two senior Trump foreign policy aides. That'd be J.D. Gordon and Sam Clovis. Everyone remembers Sam Clovis, right? He's the guy that brought Papadopoulos into the campaign. Seeking copies of any communications they had with or related to torsion, the NRA, veteran conservative operative Paul Erickson, Maria Butina, that's the name of the woman who is involved in the Russian version of the NRA and who had a furniture store in Siberia or whatever. That's they describe her here as a torsion protege who ran the Russian pro-gun group he had helped launch, and some others linked to torsion. Erickson has raised funds for the NRA and is a friend of Butina's. Shortly before the NRA's May 2016 convention, he emailed Trump campaign aide Rick Dearborn about the possibility of setting up a meeting between Putin and Trump. Erickson's email to Dearborn bore the subject line, Kremlin connection. Oh, God, what is the matter with you? I mean, good. In it, Erickson solicited, you can hear that I'm still got this cold in that laugh. It's terrible. Erickson solicited advice from Dearborn and his boss. Who's his boss? Jeff Sessions. Solicited advice from Dearborn and his boss, Jeff Sessions, a top foreign policy advisor to Trump campaign, about the best way to connect Putin and Trump. And by the way, he's also Attorney General. And that's why he recused himself, because he had a shred of, I don't know, I was going to say a shred of decency, but he remembered somewhere in the back of his mind about that's like absolutely required, and he did it. And Trump is upset. I didn't know he was going to do that. Of course he did. Bridges LLC, a company that Erickson and Butina together established in February 2016 in Erickson's home state of South Dakota, also is expected to draw scrutiny. What's Butina doing with a company in South Dakota? She's Russian. No, she's, I think, now a dual citizen. Maybe, what was her mother? Did her mother come to Miami Beach and give birth to her? I'm not sure. I'm not sure she's a dual citizen. Anyway, public records don't reveal any financial transactions, involving Bridges LLC, but you'll never know what the hell they do. In a phone interview last year, Erickson said the firm was established in case Butina needed any monetary assistance for her graduate studies. It's an unusual way to use an LLC. They say that right here, and I didn't make that up. That's right in the article. In case you need any money for your graduate studies here in the United States, I'll establish an LLC for you in South Dakota and make you co-owner, as opposed to just helping you or giving you a scholarship or something like that. Erickson said he met Butina and Torsion when he and David Keene, a former NRA president, attended a meeting of Right to Bear Arms a few years ago in Moscow. All the NRA guys traveling to Moscow. Nobody's batting an eye about this. Used to be you go to Moscow, they look at you funny. Erickson described the links between Right to Bear Arms and the NRA as a, quote, moral support operation both ways. Torsion's contacts with the NRA and the Trump campaign last year also came to the attention of Jared Kushner. He finally noticed something. Trump's son-in-law and key advisor. When Torsion tried to arrange a personal meeting with Trump near the NRA convention site last May, Kushner scotched the idea. Amazing. According to emails forwarded to Kushner. What? What does that mean? Jared, I just wanted to send you these emails in which you scotched the idea. I'm not even certain what that's supposed to mean. I got to move on from that. On top of Torsion's efforts to cozy up to the Trump campaign, the Moscow banker has forged ties with powerful conservatives, including Representative, I'm going to get you guys, just please think back to Kevin McCarthy. Pick one member of the 200 and how many plus 230 plus in the House Republican Conference. One name, one guess. Who does Moscow banker and alleged mobster Torsion contact? Dana Rohrabacher. That's correct. The Californian, whom some have deemed Putin's best friend in Washington, including the Republican whip. In a phone interview in 2016, Rohrabacher recalled meeting Torsion in Moscow a few years earlier and described him as a mover and shaker. Last February, when Torsion visited Washington, Rockefeller heir and conservative patron George O'Neill Jr. hosted a fancy 4-hour dinner for the banker on Capitol Hill, an event that drew Rohrabacher, Erickson, who's supposed to be from South Dakota, and other big names on the right. Rohrabacher has labeled Torsion as conservatives' favorite Russian. Torsion was in Washington at the time to lead his country's delegation to the National Prayer Breakfast, where Trump spoke. The banker also was slated to see the president at a meet-and-greet event prior to a White House breakfast, but Torsion's invitation was canceled after the White House learned of his alleged mob connections, Yahoo News reported. We can't meet here. We'll find someplace in a hotel. Torsion's involvement with the NRA may have begun in 2013 when he attended the group's convention in Houston. Keene, ex-NRA leader and avid hunter, was instrumental in building a relationship with the Russian, according to multiple conservative sources. Why would be the question. We don't know how, You think David Keene gets notes on every first-timer showing up to an NRA convention? Keene also helped lead a high-level NRA delegation to Moscow in December of 2015 for a week of lavish meals and meetings with Russian business and political leaders. The week's festivities included a visit to a Russian gun company and a meeting with a senior Kremlin official and wealthy Russians, according to a member of the delegation, Arnold Goldschlager, a California doctor who has become active in NRA programs to raise large donations. Terrible schnapps, Goldschlager, but okay. It's got gold flakes in it. Trump loves it. Others on the trip included Joe Gregory, who runs the NRA's Ring of Freedom program for elite donors who chip in checks of $1 million and up, Milwaukee Sheriff David Clark, we mentioned before, and Pete Brownell, a chief executive of a gun company and longtime NRA board member. In a phone interview, Goldschlager described the trip as a people-to-people mission and said he was impressed with Torsion, who he noted hosted both a welcoming dinner for the NRA contingent and another one. They were killing us with vodka and the best Russian food, Goldschlager said. The trip exceeded my expectations by logarithmic levels, which may or may not be a correct application of the word logarithmic, but I think I get what you're getting at. In other words, we partied so hard. They showed us a good time. They got us drunk, gave us good food. Maybe there was a P-tape. I don't really remember. They Goldschlagered all over the place. And we may have videoed it. I don't really know. Anyway, just another connecting thread in the storyline that we're watching Mueller and investigative reporters put together a piece at a time. Getting towards the end of the show, and so we got to try and figure out what deserves further mention and discussion on today's program, and there are a lot of data points out there. Let's see. Just sort of scanning around, thinking about what can we actually discuss comprehensively in between now and the end of the show, and that's most helpful for closing things out. That might have bear some relation to all of this. I don't know. Let's see. There's more on the strange bit of the Russia investigation. We never really read all the way through the story that Kislyak was wrapped up in yesterday, although I did point you to a couple of articles, one from BuzzFeed and then a summary of that from Mark Sumner, who I'm sure would have tied up a bunch of loose ends. It looks like there's just a bunch of other things that we need to sort of throw in at the end and see where things are taking us. There is this weird nugget from The Hill from the other day. A majority of the National Park Service Advisory Board has resigned from their jobs amid protest. It puts Ryan Zinke back on the radar. Might as well get a new data point on him. A majority of the members of this advisory board resigned their posts Monday night, all at once, in protest of how Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke has treated them, according to a new report. 9 of the 12 members of the National Park System Advisory Board suddenly quit Monday, according to the Washington Post. According to its website, the board, which was established in 1935, is made up of citizen advisors chartered by Congress to help the National Park Service care for special places saved by the American people so that all may, I think is what they mean here, but experience our heritage. I believe there's a typo. All my experience our heritage. That doesn't make any sense. The 9 departing members wrote a letter to Zinke saying they have stood by, waiting for the chance to meet and continue the partnership as prescribed by law. We understand the complexity of transition, but our requests to engage have been ignored, and the matters on which we wanted to brief the new department team are clearly not part of its agenda. Board Chairman Tony Knowles wrote in the letter obtained by the Post, I wish the National Park System and Service well, and will always be dedicated to their success. Knowles told the Post that the board hasn't held a meeting since President Trump took office last January, despite the board being required to meet by law 2 times each year. We were frozen out, Knowles told the newspaper. Another board member, Gretchen Long, told the Post that the departing board members resigned because they were concerned that its work could be so summarily dismissed by the Trump administration. We worry greatly that the new initiatives incorporated by the National Park System are now being rescinded, Long told the Post. Interior Department spokeswoman Heather Swift did not respond to the Post's request for comment on the board members' departure. Just another data point worth being aware of, and among the various things Zinke is up to, you now have people who put the veneer of respectability on the department departing in droves. Wow. Okay, well, definitely plenty to digest there. And let's see. Lastly, why not spend a few minutes raising an alarm? Why not? Why not frighten all of us? This way we don't have to discuss it tomorrow. The Guardian has a piece that caught my eye today by Olivia Solon, who writes, social media firms warned of new type of online extremism at Senate hearings. That raises an eyebrow. You want to pay attention on online extremism, especially a new type. They always catch us unawares. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as lawmakers, urged to prepare for foreign actors using U.S. citizens to carry out violence. It doesn't sound like all that new, but then again, the other story about the NRA wasn't new, and everybody treated it as new. We try to keep you informed ahead of time so that you can comfort yourself in times of trouble by saying, I already knew that. But I say it's not new in that we've discussed stories here on the air a couple of times. It's not like I investigated them. I just read them. Other people did the footwork. I always say that's true. But about how close the Russians so far, or allegedly the Russians, have come to being able to manipulate real world, real space, real life actions by people by posing as virtual allies and urging them to do it. Facebook pages for meetups and let's have a demonstration. Remember, that was the big news, that they had gotten people to assemble. And it was pretty obvious from that when we had one bunch of Russian trolls manipulating right-wingers here in the United States to go demonstrate outside of a mosque somewhere or something like that, and Russian agents posing as left-wing agitators encouraging people to go counter-protest. Or they didn't even say that there was going to be another protest, to go protest on the other side of things, and then throwing them into a pot somewhere to see, will they fight? And that, signaled to me that we were only inches away from having Russian trolls encourage American idiots to maybe bring a gun with them to such a situation and maybe fire it just to show you mean business. And that may be where we're landing here. Olivia, no doubt less alarmist than me on this. Let's read what she has to say. She's organized her thoughts on this. Social media companies and lawmakers have been urged to prepare for a looming type of extremism born from foreign actors mobilizing U.S. citizens to carry out violent acts in their homeland. Speaking during a Senate committee hearing on extremist propaganda and social media, Clint Watts, another name we have called before, a fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute,
warned of foreign countries using the kinds of persuasive techniques previously used to recruit Islamist terrorists to manipulate political discourse and mobilize unwitting Americans to attack specific targets. Watts described this new type of threat as Anwar al-Awlaki meets Pizzagate. Yikes. Referring to the U.S.-born jihadist cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, credited with using social media to inspire terror attacks around the world, and the viral online conspiracy theory that led an armed man from North Carolina to discharge his weapon in a Washington pizza restaurant. I think I said it better yesterday when I said, shoot the place up. Be honest. Discharge your weapon. It might have been an accident. I discharged my weapon. Instead of recruiting Americans to their own ideologies, foreign actors will instead focus on sowing division based on existing political issues within the United States and manipulating individuals to the point where they take violent action. The greatest concern moving forward might likely be a foreign intelligence service posing as Americans on social media, infiltrating one or both political extremes in the U.S., and there's probably more than just a both, there are several, and then recruiting unwitting Americans to undertake violence against a target of the foreign power's choosing, said Watts in his testimony to the Senate's Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. Really? That's the committee? Commerce, Science, and Okay. Alongside representatives from Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, Watts faced questioning from the committee about tackling extremist propaganda, such as that of the Islamic State. However, the conversation frequently shifted to Russian influence operations, bots, and fake news, issues that have dogged the social media platform over the last couple of years. The technology companies outlined the steps they had taken to police their networks for extremist content and recruitment. All three said they had allocated additional resources to identifying and removing extremist content, including implementing tools powered by artificial intelligence to automatically find and remove it. They highlighted previously reported measures, including the creation of the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism. However, Watts argued that they were being reactive rather than proactive to the threats they may face. Social media companies realize the damage of these bad actors far too late. They race to implement policies that prevent the last information attack, but have yet to anticipate the next abuse of their social media platforms by emerging threats, he said. To tackle these emerging threats, social media companies need to make more effort to verify users' identity, clamp down on bots, and hire threat intelligence specialists, I guess probably like him, to prepare for new exploitation techniques and deliver more transparency around both, it says both, but then it just says around both political advertising and something else, I guess. In November, Facebook announced that it would alert users if they had interacted with a Facebook page or Instagram account created by the Internet Research Agency, a state-backed organization based in St. Petersburg that carries out online misinformation operations. During the hearing, Twitter's Carlos Monge? It sounds like monkey. M-O-N-J-E. Did you say Monge? Carlos suggests Monge. Said his company would be doing the same. Okay, we shouldn't be focusing on how it pronounces his name. I mispronounced pronounce. It might be time to end this article and to end the show, and I know it's definitely time to end the show. In fact, we're even a little bit late on starting our outro music here. Anyway, I just wanted to put that article for you on the record to scare the crap/bejesus out of you, depending on your system of belief, I guess. Those of you who believe in bejesus, go to church and talk to him. What can I tell you? I have no answers for you. Anyway, very interesting stuff today. Friday, of course, coming up. We'll sort out maybe we'll do a lightning round and run through all these other data points well worth discussing. We, of course, have the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up in just a few minutes here, too. Oh, there was something just before I ran out on this article here that I thought reminded me of something I wanted to bring up. And now we'll just have to make it wait until tomorrow, and I'll see if I can remember what they are. I'll tell you instead what's coming up next right here on Netroots Radio to entice you to stay. How about that? It's Shrimp and Grits Thursday. at the Bistro Cafe. Let's see. Velshi and Rule report on the mass resignations at the National Park Board. Ooh, another report on this one under Ryan Zinke. And the Department of Justice wants to arrest elected officials for implementing sanctuary policies. We're going to get to arrests now. The Energy Department threatens a whistleblower after he exposes a shady meeting with Secretary Rick Perry and coal baron Robert Murray.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Fox News is attacking reporter April Ryan because she questioned Donald Trump's racist comments, and now she's getting death threats. So maybe that online stuff Clint Watts was telling us about is ready to roll. Cyprus, Malta, and Russia gang up on a whistleblower of high-level international corruption. All that and more coming up next.